got a special guest this week. One of our favourite elite members, Mr. Graham Beal, is joining myself and Johnny Boy. And we're going to be talking all about the construction industry today, why it's so dire, why the margins are so shit, and how to overcome some of those things and defy industry norms.
Go on, John. Our favourites.
Oh, come on.
Our favourite. Of course. Graham, baby.
Yeah.
Mr. Beal.
Couldn't resist that one. Mr. Beal, yes. Hello, Mr. Beal.
Morning, gents.
Do you want to quickly tell the lovely listeners what you do, what the business is, and then we can go from there?
Yeah, I have a interiors business, so dry lining, painting, decorating, suspended ceilings and the like. Been in construction all my life, working for main contractors, working for subcontractors. So, yeah, I've had all the ups and downs of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, how long have we been working together now?
I think coming up 2 years.
Is it?
Mm.
Blimey, we should probably propose soon, John. Get that.
I think we should put our prices up for him for sure.
Thanks.
Contract reviews coming up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what was it? What was it that you made that made you first join us all those many years ago?
I think it was seeing what you put on social media, and a lot of that resonated with me in terms of things that I wanted out of my business and wanted out of my life. And after seeing sort of a few of the posts, obviously I was connected with both of you. I think then, Connor, you sort of reached out through LinkedIn messages, and then the rest is history, as they say.
So we nabbed you by a bit of cold outbound.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make a really good point here, right? Think or listen back, rewind the video if you're listening to this or whatever you're doing, and let's listen to what Graham just said. Okay? We were talking about his pain, his problems in the industry, direct response marketing stuff on social media. What Graham did not say was, I loved your selfies, I loved your self-absorbed, narcissistic, navel-gazing, vulnerable bollocks, and thought you'd be real good basket cases to work with. And then Connor reached out to him, outbound marketing, and he's been with us for 2 years and paid us far more money than he should have done. Right? So listeners and watchers, please bear that in mind. The golden nugget right there. Carry on.
I think it was probably to clarify on that, or to expand on that, John. It was a feeling that you understood. That's, I think, probably what I, in terms of not just business, but in terms of life. And it was like, this guy understands me. Yeah, whether it was subliminal or however you did it through the messaging, that's what came across.
It's almost like we know what we're talking about.
One grumpy old fart to another, eh?
Thanks, Connor.
Says the man with the boy band haircut.
Depeche Mode.
I wasn't going to say.
Do you know
Depeche Mode?
Yeah.
I remember them.
Yeah.
Are they that big? Yesterday on
They were back in the day.
Everyone knew. Everyone knew Depeche Mode. I had no idea. Would I know a song they do?
Probably
not.
I'm not sure I know any songs of theirs either. And I was around during their heyday.
For those that aren't watching on YouTube and are listening on Apple, Spotify, and whatnot, I've had a haircut, and it may have been the biggest mistake I've made. Because every call that I've attended with clients, even prospects, fucking community calls, everyone's, "You had a haircut?" Turn up in this call, Graham's immediately like, haircut. It's such a bloke thing to do as well. I remember growing up in school, if anyone ever got a haircut in the evening, came into school the next day, they got ripped the piss out of for doing such a normal thing. Oh, you had a haircut, new hair.
Do you reckon it still happens in this today's woke society?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because you probably have someone go to school with a new haircut. They get the piss ripped out of them, which is obligatory. And then they spend the next 3 months in fucking counselling.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably the new part.
Fuck off. Show some spine, people. Christ.
That's probably the new part, isn't it? That they end up in fucking therapy. The school cracks down on it. Just for a bit of badgering. Anyway, people aren't here to listen about haircuts. They're here to listen to Graham, not even to me and you, John. So no pressure here, Graham. But how long ago was it that you started the business?
7 years ago, almost to the day.
7 years ago.
7th of May, 2016. So, yeah, long time. Feels like forever.
A long time.
Oh, yeah.
And when you got started out, was it just you bootstrapping it, or?
I started it as a second stream of income originally. So I had a full-time job. I was on the board of a large engineering business, but I wanted basically a second stream income to give me money to build passive income in the background. That was the original reason for doing it. And I also wanted a safety net in case anything went wrong in my job. I had another income stream. That sort of translated into probably the first 2 years of the business, probably even 3 years of the business. It was remote. So I had two team members who ran the day-to-day, and then I did all the pricing and all the estimating on an evening and on a weekend. Because my background, I'm a quantity surveyor, so I'm from a commercial background. I then got to the stage where I left the company that I was working with, and it was one of those, I'm 40, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it type. I need to go and be my own boss. And yeah, that was 2018, end of 2018.
And how were those first couple of years? It must have gone well enough for you to be like, right, I can afford to take this risk.
No, they weren't really, to be honest. I parted ways with the last business sort of by mutual consent. I think it had run its time and they wanted to do other things and I wanted to do other things. Had to take the proverbial financial haircut, keeping on the haircut theme, to start off with, and then sort of look to build and then, as John takes his hat off, and then look to sort of build it up in the background. So it's had its ups and downs. It's now 4 times the size that it was when I took that leap. And, you know, it's, been an interesting challenge.
Because obviously you've run it for 7 years now.
Yeah.
You've grown it very well. So what mistakes do you think you were making in those first 1, 2, 3 years, and how did you remedy them for the growth?
I think a lot of the things that you guys teach, really, I think I was naive at the start in terms of I tried to promote rapid growth by tight margins. So I tried to balloon turnover at the expense of profitability, which is never a good thing to do. Because I was conscious at the time that the business had to reach a certain critical mass to be able to afford me. So I wanted to try and get there as fast as I could. I didn't say no enough, which I think is something that you guys are certainly talking about a lot at the moment in the stuff that you're putting out. And the course yesterday was about that. So that's probably another thing. And I've always been somebody I'd like to empower people who work with me in terms of delegating responsibility and allowing them to run, if you like, and me almost be the coach in the background. And I think I've probably been guilty with abdicating in certain instances rather than delegating. And that's come back to bite me.
I want to pick up on the point that you made, that you just said yes to everything.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you made the typical construction mistake of, if I get all of this turnover, there must be some net in there somewhere. Yeah.
Well, I mean, ultimately, historically, I've always worked for main contractors. So the main contractor world, the margins are like nothing. You know, I've worked for businesses that if you make 5% on a job, you've done amazingly well. We bid schemes at 0. I bid schemes in the recessions at below 0, so below our cost threshold, with the hope that we'd make the money back up through variations and through subcontractor buying gains. So I've come from an environment where the margins were extremely tight. And I think that then moving into the subcontract world, where the margins are probably a little bit more healthy because you're more niche, that took a bit of a while to get my head around.
So how did you learn that? Right, it sounds ridiculous, because if in any other business you said, right, I'm gonna make sure my margins are negative,
yes,
you'd get laughed out the room. But it seems so common in construction. They see that proverbial carrot in front of them. They're like, well, if I win this job, there's definitely going to be more work down in the future, which is a very rare case, even though it gets promised almost every day in construction. So how did you twig that, right, this is a fool's game? Because still to this day, when I talk to men in construction, they always say, my margins are tight, but they have to be that way, because otherwise I won't win the business. I won't win any future work of them. I'll do anything I can to get on their main, their preferred suppliers list. So how did you make that mental shift that, right, this is a mug's game and I actually need to be looking at the fucking profit, not the big number at the top?
I think working for a main contractor, or working for a number of main contractors, not necessarily the last business, the engineering business, that was in a sort of different sector, but your more traditional main contractors who were doing, hospital extensions, school refurbs, all that sort of stuff. If you look at their accounts, they're turning over, 40 to 50 million. They're making 40 grand net. So you were looking at a job, and you'd literally have a job. Let's say, you're building a health centre. If you put a manhole in the wrong place, the job lost money. And the job might be 4 million quid, just because of how the risk was apportioned by, and I think that's client driven, because all the clients want to do is push all the risk down to the main contractor. So the main contractor gets all the risk, doesn't push back. Then the main contractor goes, "Ooh, right, okay, what do I do with this risk?" Now, when I started in my career, for the first main contractor I worked for, we had labour on the books. So we'd have joiners, bricklayers, we'd do some of the work in-house and self-deliver it. Latterly, essentially a main contractor is just a management company. So all they do is employ subcontractors to build the job and have a site agent to manage them. So they'll have, the site agent will be employed by them, the forklift truck driver will be employed by them, everybody else is subcontract. So the next thing is, right, we push that risk down to the subcontractor. So it's a trickle-down effect that starts from the client. I don't think in this it's necessarily the main contractor's issue. I think the key issue is it's an issue about saying no. If the main contractor was to push back and go, actually, no, I need to make some money here, then it might be a different outcome. One of the things that in one of the businesses I worked for that we talked about a lot was getting the supply chain in and actually analysing their prices and saying, look, we understand you have to make money. Let's not price all this risk in. Let's look at it on a more open, almost like a negotiated relationship where all parties go into that relationship understanding that everyone has to make money. And I just looked at main contracting, which is my background, and thought, if I set up a main contracting business, the company's going to have to do tens of millions of pounds to be able to afford the lifestyle that I want out of it. The stress is phenomenal that comes with that in terms of, I've run big companies and that stress is unbelievable. To make nothing, to look at your accounts at the end of the year and go, wow, I've made enough to, get the office redecorated, and that's it. And I just looked at it and thought, this is just a mug's game, but it's the famous words of, it's always been this way. And I think that's where, having engaged with you guys, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just a case of growing your balls fast, is one of the things that you say, and saying, no, we can't operate in that way, because ultimately as a business, it's not sustainable. Construction as an industry isn't sustainable. It's just all the big PLCs are just turnover magnets. That's all they do. They don't make any money.
It's in a parlous state, isn't it?
Yes. And I think one of the things that is a big attraction as a subcontractor is you think, oh, I want to work for all these big blue chip businesses. And in reality, they're just set up to shaft you, because that's how they make their margins. They make their QS or commercial team make their margins from not paying you and getting paid themselves, because, I've been there and I know how tight the margins are. I know the challenges that they have, and that's their complete modus operandi when it comes into entering any contract.
Wow. What an awful state when one manhole out of place can cost you your whole profit, and the people that you're working for are actively looking for any way to shaft you, because that's the only way that they're going to make any money.
Yes. Yeah, and ultimately the clients, from a client perspective, as in the end client, so the main contractor's client, they basically, now I've certainly seen over the time of my career, the documentation that they give you is worse. So the drawings are crap, the specs crap, and it's all about a case of, here's all your risk, and by the way, you should allow for all of this. So there'll be something that you haven't spotted that then bites you in the ass, and then the margin isn't there to absorb that. And I think that's where a lot of main contractors struggle.
So you've identified all of this.
Yeah.
What have you done to try and remedy it?
Well, I've stepped into sort of the tier 2 subcontract world, because I recognise that from a self-delivery perspective, the margins are better. What that does is it puts you at the bottom of the food chain. So when the shit's going down the hill, you're the person who gets the shit ultimately because you're at the bottom of the food chain. So, you know, whilst your margins might be better, it's often harder to realise those profits because of the way you tread, which is why certainly lessons learned for us is how you pick your clients, because picking the wrong client could ultimately, you know, could potentially bust your business just the way they behave.
Yeah, all it takes is one bastard because those margins are so tight to put a big company under in construction, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we've sort of like looked to try and consolidate around who we know. We might do a job for somebody to dip out a small value, and if that job doesn't turn out how we want it to turn out, and how, you know, if that person's difficult to work with, then we just don't work with them again.
Yeah, fuck them.
Yeah.
Fuck them. So with all of your vast knowledge, Graham, and that huge brain, we've got a lot of construction guys in our world. I think it's just because we swear and we don't wear suits, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons a lot of construction guys, well, two reasons a lot of guys in construction like us. But I speak to a lot of them, and a lot of them have the game plan of, right, I am going to just try and bid on everything. I will do any work at any margin just to build my name, get it out there, and their game plan is literally to hope there's some profit in all that net.
Yeah.
So to those guys that I talk to on a very regular basis, what three things would you tell them?
I think the first
thing, wanting to start make a good profit.
The first thing I would do is know your numbers. So I think a lot of people, when you're bidding work, you need to know what your cost base is. You need to know what your overhead is. You need to know what profit you want out of it. You know, you've got people sort of saying, well, I've added X to it. Well, how have you got to X%? I don't know. I just have, that's what the industry is. And it's like, but you need to know, if you want to realise, I don't know, 10% margin or 5% margin or whatever that margin is, how do you get there? I suppose that's probably the commercial side of me in terms of drilling down into the numbers more, but it's an important thing in any business, knowing what your cost base is, certainly in construction where the margins are very tight.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other piece of it, I would say, is that it's all that glitters isn't gold. And you look at a lot of these massive PLCs and all the rest of it and think, wow, I could get this job. It's 100,000, it's £1 million, it's £10 million. But potentially it's £10 million worth of pain. And you're often better off staying smaller and having a more profitable business than you are growing it and having a less profitable business. I've certainly found in numerous businesses that I've worked in where a growth spurt has often been at the expense of profitability. And scaling a business, people want to take my business from 25 to 50 million. At 25 million, they were making $1 million. At 50 million, they're making $500,000. But all the extra stress of all the extra staff and all the worry and all the sleepless nights and all the rest of it aren't thought about. And I think that looking back, and I'd put myself in this same category, a lot of it's ego driven. It's driven by that ego of wanting to, I've got this huge company and I've got this and I've got that and I've got the other. And I think latterly I've looked more at, I'd rather be under the radar and enjoy my life than I would be, having a lot of stress and, having some of the trappings that come out of it, but ultimately they're not worth it. They're not worth the expense of your family and not seeing your kids and all that sort of stuff, which is where a lot of people go down. So,
one thing I want to point out here is about the control that Graham has wrested back. What I've been hearing, and I know this anyway because I've been working with construction guys and indeed specifically QSs for probably 4 or 5 years now. And the very first construction guy I worked with was a QS. And this will probably resonate with you, Graham. He was contracted to HS2 and a couple of other big deals. And it was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
The prices were always being hammered down. He couldn't speak to anyone in charge. Everything went through committee, various levels of committees. He was paid late. And I see this being discussed a lot on social media and the usual whining about how we can't do anything about it. My advice to him was very simple, and it's what you did. I don't know that you did it because we told you to or not. I can't remember now, but probably. My advice to nearly anyone in construction is the easiest way to fix all this shit about low margins, retention, all the shit you get with main contractors is lower your sites to tier 2 or tier 3 even.
Yeah.
Because there you've got this thing where you get firms that are big enough to pay your bills, but small enough you can speak to the guy or girl in charge.
Yes.
So you can get things done. And they can also make decisions. They can't just say, oh, it's company policy from on high not to do this, you know?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Just a point I wanted to bring out here.
Absolutely.
Another reason that I'm sure we've all been down the boozer, and there's a geezer in construction. This happens a lot, actually, and I'm pretty sure everyone's got a story like this. And there's the local wealthy man, and they always seem to be in construction.
Yeah.
And they're always down the boozer, bragging, "Oh yeah, just won this £1 million job. Oh yeah, just won this £2 million job." And they're always quoting the top numbers. And I've seen this happen where I live on Hayling Island. I've seen this happen 4 times. Just local construction man, all of a sudden, everyone's talking about him because he's got the new Bentley. He's just bought the new house, and he's always down the boozer talking about the jobs he's just won. It's happened 4 times, by the way, so it's mental.
It's a trend.
Yeah, and everybody talks about them, which fuels their ego. Then they keep going for those big jobs because they want to be able to go down the boozer and say, yeah, another £3 million job secured, which then all of the other guys in construction around there with their own smaller firms, especially the younger lads, they latch onto them.
Yeah.
They're the dog's bollocks, and they think, right, if I want to make it, if I want that Bentley and the big house, I've got to go for all the big jobs. And they just let their ego completely get in the way.
Mm.
And they have ignorance around their numbers. That's the big thing here as well. The amount of construction guys that are just say, "Oh, I don't know numbers. Oh, I can't write," and they think that's okay, but it really fucking isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of the people that you probably refer to have probably come from the trade, so they've been a joiner or a bricklayer or a ground worker, and they decide, right, I'll go and set my own company up, and I'll go and have a go myself. And often, you know, they do. You know, fair play to them, they do make a lot of success out of it. But I think it's when you get to that size and that scale, that's where you need to know those things. And you often find that the guy with the Bentley in the pub car park, it's on lease and he has no money. It's all.
We spoke to a guy, or Connor spoke to a guy probably a couple of 3 years ago now, early COVID. And he was a brickie. And he was doing over $1 million a year in turnover. And Connor says, well, you know, what's your margins? What your profit? He said, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm making a profit. For all he knew, he was doing $1 million in turnover, working 18 hours a day and losing 100 grand a year. We just don't know. He didn't know either.
No.
We've got a guy now recently, he's doing 65. He's only a young lad, 22, 23. He's doing 65K a month in turnover. Got no idea how much profit he's making or if he's making any at all. It makes me laugh.
Yeah, it's lunacy.
It is lunacy.
Yeah,
utter lunacy. And that guy that I spoke to 2-3 years ago, lovely fella, but he had the car on lease, brand new BMW on lease. He had recently bought a big 6-bed home, and the reason he booked the call with myself and John was because I've committed to all of this and I've got no idea if I can actually afford it. I thought the fact that I was making £1 million a year would be enough, but I'm shitting my kecks. And it was like, oh God, you got to go away and do your numbers.
Yeah.
And we never heard back from him, actually. So I hope he's out there still doing well. And
he's done all right, yeah.
Yeah, the predictable didn't happen.